Hey everybody, Norm here. This week's episode of Still Untitled was brought to you by Automatic. Automatic is a tiny piece of hardware that you plug into your car to bring it into the 21st century. Just plug the dongle under your steering wheel into the diagnostic port, pair it with your smartphone, and then you get access to a wide range of data like your fuel expenses and other driving habits. Automatic can even detect a crash and call for help. So go to automatic.com and use the code Untitled when checking out to get 20% off. Thanks to Automatic. Thanks to you guys for listening. And on with the show.
All right, let's start while the jackhammer's not going.
Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam Savage.
And I'm Norm.
Apologies in advance for the jackhammering, which you may or may not hear. It's all depends on Norm's skill with the audio tools.
Podcast needs to go up in an hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have some jackhammering. There was some water issues in this area. And they're taking care of them.
Okay, that's good. I mean, we have water issues throughout California, so
we do.
It's a refreshing change. What's going on with everybody this week? Anything exciting happening today?
Thank you for asking. I'm getting on a plane tonight and taking a red eye to Washington, D.C., where in the morning I'm going to go meet my friend Dave Lavery at NASA just to talk about some stuff. But after that,
at Goddard or downtown NASA?
Yeah, NASA. But then after that, I'm going to the White House Science Fair.
Ooh.
You did a spit take.
I almost did it. I decided not to at the last minute.
You were like, I can't spit on anything in here.
Yeah, this is all good stuff.
This is the 6th annual science fair, the last one of the Obama administration, and it is showcasing young geniuses from all over the country, regional and national science fair winners. I've been to one before. I went to one a few years ago, and it's amazing.
It's on the White House grounds.
It's in the White House.
Okay.
It was in the actual White House, and it's showcasing just this amazing ingenuity of kids. Last time I was there, these 3 11-year-old boys in suits and ties were showing me how they used accelerometers in the iPhone to test the efficacy of football helmets.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Will
cool.
Smith made a movie about that.
Yeah, no, this is like 4 years ago. They were way ahead of the curve.
Wow.
I think Will got all his data from these young boys.
Makes sense.
You had the kid with the potato gun?
No, that's the Maker Faire.
That's the White House Maker Faire.
I will tell you that these 3 young boys, they showed me their whole thing and they went through their spiel, and they're very wonderfully rehearsed, right? They really worked it out. Who's going to say what? And they finished. They're like, so what do you think? And I said, I think I want to go home and kick my kids' butts. It's an amazing amalgam of clever, beautiful deep dive into science. And let me cover the boilerplate here. You can share your science fair projects on Twitter, #WHScienceFair. You can also go to whitehouse.gov/science-fair and see what people are going to be showing tomorrow. It's 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow.
Are they live streaming it?
I believe they might be, but I'm not positive about that.
What did you guys do with science fair projects when you were kids? Do you remember?
We never had a science fair.
What?
In my high school, there was not a science fair, or at least no one told me about it.
You really are a fake scientist.
I would have known because I was with those people.
So, we had science fairs as a
I was
kid,
one of those people.
But it was a time when there was a nebulous. There was a difference between science demonstrations and science experiments.
Well, that was the first time I went to a science fair. I got caught in that and did a demonstration, and
it
just
should
got
have been
shut down.
Right?
Really?
If you brought a volcano to a science to a fair where you're supposed to do experiments, that was no good.
I brought a robot in 4th grade to the regional science fair. There was an awesome robot that I had made and put it all together and built a little box to control it and all that. And they wanted absolutely nothing to do with that.
Because you weren't testing anything.
Because I wasn't testing anything. The next year I came back with what was the effect of lead shot on plants.
Oh.
So you had to have a hypothesis.
So I grew, I had the whole thing, the whole loop,
multiple
the circle,
controls.
And I had a half dozen control plants, a half dozen experimental plants of different concentrations of shot. And they liked that. That was received very well.
Nice.
So Yeah, it was interesting because it's funny that you had the same thing.
Yeah, I built a racetrack with, I think, 8 different materials for the road for friction.
I'm going to note that right here in the podcast is where one of the first tested commentators will go, I've got to pause this and write about how terrible that jackhammer sound is.
Yeah, but we're really sorry. We could go out and ask those guys to stop at their union, and it's just not going to
Our
go well.
apologies, but this is city living.
Yeah, it happens. We've done pretty well on sound for the noisy environment of your shop for the last 5 years.
So what do you
4 years.
prefer? Do you prefer the science experiment or the science demonstration?
The experiment.
The experiment.
I mean, there's a place for the demonstration, though.
There totally is.
Like, if you build an amazing robot, if you build an Atlas robot, then that's a good demonstration. That indicates science and engineering.
What thrills me, though, is I use this example a lot. There's a girl named Ellie Lammer over in Berkeley who had a suspicion that the Berkeley parking meters weren't correctly timing how much time you got for your quarter.
What?
And she petitioned Berkeley City Council for somehow making sure they were accurate. And the City Council was like, that's going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars to test it, and we can't do it. And so Ellie Lammer went and tested a bunch of them herself as a science fair project and discovered that none of them were accurate.
Like, were they all cheaters on the city side or on the
No,
people's
actually,
side?
they were sort of equal on both sides.
Oh, that's fair.
They were This is back with the clockwork, right? Where you actually literally turned a clock. I've got one in one of my cabinets here. And it turned out there was no legislation that required parking meters to be accurate.
Well, that was also when parking tickets were probably like $8, right?
But still,
as opposed to these $60 monsters.
One would assume, I mean, one of the reasons you have government is to make sure that everyone's going to play by the rules. And there was no, so there is now legislation requiring parking meters to be accurate, and it's called Lammers Law.
Wow,
That's
great.
awesome.
That's
awesome.
science.
But
Right?
she took away the ability for the guy who'd know which meters would be the best one to park at. That insider, the valuable local guide information.
San Francisco is full of parking fiefdoms where everyone kind of know. Like in my neighborhood, I know a couple of secret parking spaces that other people trolling around my neighborhood wouldn't find.
They evolve. Like, it's a constant back and forth.
Yeah.
I used to work at Beach Blanket Babylon on Green.
No, that's a parking nightmare.
On Green Street in North Beach, which is, in San Francisco, legendarily the worst place to have to park. But there are 2 secret parking spaces.
Wait, what?
There are 2.
Circa when? Circa 1991?
Circa 1993, there were 2 secret spaces on Green Street. There were 2 red curbs. So this is a curb between 2 driveways, and they were at either. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah,
they were at either end. So Green Street is this
way to burn those bridges out.
Yeah, boom, North Beach. I'm done with you. Green Street is this long basket almost, and it goes from hill to hill. Mm-hmm. So on the north side of the hill, way up at the top, there are 2 driveways with the red curb between them, but they won't get you towed if you park in that red curb. And the same thing on the southern end at the high end of Green Street.
One of the things I learned as somebody who used to have a garage that was regularly blocked by people who are bad is that in the red curbs, most of the red curbs in the city around garages, totally freelance. People come out and just paint a red curb around their driveway when they're not supposed to. And those may or may not, they're not actionable from a ticketing sense. They are actionable from a getting your ass towed sense.
Right. No, so the parking meter people won't ticket in the red curbs at all unless requested.
Or if you're in front of a fire hydrant.
Right. No.
Yeah.
Sorry, forgive me. But in residential neighborhoods, the red curb doesn't mean anything to the meter maids until you actually call and then you have to prove this is my driveway.
And it's a legit red curb.
Right.
And sometimes those driveway openings are much wider than the actual path needed. But if you're just into the curb,
I will tell you
poking
that
out.
I live here in the Mission. I live in a space where I have red curb on both sides of my driveway. It is regularly ignored, and it is a goddamn nightmare.
Well, your road's really narrow,
to
too.
get my car out. And we know that I bought a Prius. I've mentioned it on Tested. The Prius is a little bit wider than our other cars. I think it's like maybe 4 inches wider, and that makes it even harder to get out and to get out. So
it has kind of a long wheelbase for that length, that size car too.
We rarely have people towed. We have done it a few times when it's been egregious, like we can't get our car out, but it's a nightmare. It's a constant battle.
I used to live on Harrison Street across from Costco.
Oh, shit.
And there was a giant. It was a bad parking neighborhood at the time because there were a lot of startups and it was all like live work lofts. But people would park in front of a driveway that had, I think, 12 cars parked in it, like a shared garage for the whole building.
Oh my God.
And they just park there. Just go walk away, go to Costco, go get a 45-pound bag of chips or something. And I probably had a dozen people towed a year at that place because people would come in and try to park there after like normal people would go to work. And I worked at a magazine, so I was going to work at like 10.
Right.
And I couldn't get to work. You know, you couldn't get to work, so somebody's got to get towed.
Vigilante justice.
It was bad. People who block people's driveways are bad people.
It's a really
I don't know why we're
shite thing to
we
do.
got from
This is the
science
least
fairs
interesting topic.
to-
People who don't live
science
here.
Parking
experiments
sucks. Film
to
at
parking
11.
in San Francisco. So what are the experiments? Is there a preview of some of the things you'll be seeing, or are you just going in blind?
I'm going in blind.
Are you there in an official capacity? Are you a judge or are you just a spectator?
I'm spectating as a science communicator. I expect I'll run into some people I know there.
Some science guys,
Some
maybe?
science guys. Maybe.
Okay.
Every time I go to the White House, I see Dean Kamen. I see Bill Nye.
Tell Bill Nye I love him. He's my favorite. Sorry.
I think he
Nothing
loves you
personal.
too.
Okay, he's a good
Hey,
guy.
you guys are both at the South by Southwest panel. Both of you guys. Bill Nye, Dean Kamen, and you. South by Southwest 2 years ago.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right. But wait, we were going to cover something last week.
Oh.
That we didn't get to on your front. Again, sorry about the jackhammers.
Yeah, it's so I did a talk a couple of weeks ago at a women's club here in San Francisco about
What is that?
So, have you ever heard of the Bohemian Club? I had to do some research about this.
Yeah.
So the Bohemian Club is a social club.
Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove, yeah, right. It's a social club that was, I think, founded by a Hearst in the 1800s.
Yeah.
As a way for really, really hyper wealthy white guys to go hang out with each other in the woods and get naked and go swimming and stuff.
And piss on trees out in the open.
And do whatever they wanted.
And
no
this
talking
still
about
exists.
business. Still exists. It's very exclusive.
Still
It's
goes.
None of us can get in.
In
Don't
Nob
worry.
Hill, like one of those.
No.
big
It's up in Sonoma.
It's up in Sonoma, and it's one of these few places in which you might be walking around and see someone as a juxtaposition as weird as, let's say, a major NPR personality and Karl Rove.
Right. Or Nixon used to like going there.
Nixon used to go. Reagan went. Lots of conservative,
So this
but
is
also
like that.
So this was made by the wives of the gentleman who founded the Bohemian Club as a response, is my understanding. This may be apocryphal. I don't know.
I love this idea though.
So this
Do
was,
they piss on trees?
No tree pissing. It's a very nice building in
Ferns. Nice.
Oh my God, this is going just worse, way worse than I imagined. So they reached out and wanted me to come talk about technology, and they never had anybody talk about technology, and they do weekly luncheons with like a speaker. So sometimes they have the conductor of the symphony come in. Sometimes they have, it's usually arts and education.
So it's kind of like Commonwealth Club of California.
It's very much like Commonwealth Club.
Nice.
So I came and talked about how the pace of technology is accelerating and actually what that means, because we hear that a lot. Nobody knows. People kind of think, oh, well, my computer's going to be faster, my video games work better.
Right.
But beyond that, you don't know what it means. And I kind of broke it down to before the smartphone, everything led up to the smartphone, and then all of the things that branch out from the smartphone,
Right.
And have become really cheap and really accessible, and the way that they're changing our lives, like quadcopters and VR exist explicitly because smartphones got really cheap, and the
Because we're
components in
carrying a
smartphones
very
got really
powerful
cheap.
computer in our pocket.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they were building them at scale very cheaply. So how did you get hooked up with this?
A
gig?
friend of a friend. So somebody said they were looking for somebody, and somebody recommended me, and I went in and met them a few weeks ago, and it was we hit it off. But the interesting thing about the talk wasn't the talk so much as the questions I got afterwards. So this is a club of, I mean, I would say that the median age was probably in the mid 50s, and there were people all the way up into their early 90s, and people as young as probably Norm's age. The questions I got were fascinating because it was questions we don't get exposed to normals that often. And these were people, they were asking the Q&A at the end, they used as an opportunity just to ask a nerd about general tech questions. So I got questions about, one of the first questions I got was about securing the Internet of Things, which I thought was fascinating.
Totally fascinating.
So
I'm amazed you even know.
Right. Was the assumption that because you were brought in as an expert, like they could ask anything in the whole in the spectrum of technology.
That's what it became.
Okay.
I mean, at first they started asking about things in the talk, and then it branched out really quickly.
I mean, securing the Internet of Things it's particularly getting me because I have lots of things that work like that, and they work great most of the time.
Well, we used it as an opportunity. I used it as an opportunity to talk about encryption and the value of encryption and the value of things that are secured from the ground up from the get-go versus things like Windows where they tack on internet security 20 years into the product's life cycle.
But and it's a philosophy of security.
Right.
It's a philosophy of the secure connection where people aren't thinking about this when your refrigerator says, "Oh, sign me onto your network so I can tell you when you need milk," and then it's got some really crappy protocol that my neighbor can just go scrub and find out my internet wireless password.
And if they aren't updating the software, if they aren't committed to updating that device, then you shouldn't plug it into your network. Is the short version.
Right.
But we use that to talk about encryption and Apple and the Department of Justice and why it's important that we don't build backdoors into things. And so what I was going to say, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I wanted to encourage people, you guys, who probably are nerds, to go out and engage the people in your lives that are not and see what questions they have about things that are going on and things that are happening. Because I think the results will be really fascinating. And I'd like to hear back from people who like what kind of questions they get. Because I think, yeah.
So I heard something recently that I appreciated. We've talked before about technology in your house and multimedia technology and how it's difficult to make it work correctly. And I have a whole system in my house that's never quite worked correctly, and it's awful. And this is because
and it was probably incredibly expensive.
Oh,
right?
yeah. And on multiple levels, right? There was a system in place before I bought the house, and I've added to it. And it's one of these things of like, the Chamberlain that opens a garage door can work 99 times out of 100, but that still means once a month you can't get into your goddamn house.
Yeah.
And that drives me nuts. So do you remember when Bill Gates built his big, amazing house in Seattle? One of the big things that we were all probably noting was, oh, you're going to get a fob and the music you choose in your room will follow you around the house.
Yes.
And it was like, oh my God. So, I finally bought a house with a multimedia system and I found myself wondering, how does Bill's house work? It turns out, from what I've heard, it's never worked perfectly.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, it worked one time for the press demo.
Right. That somebody requires... What I would need is someone almost full time to manage this bloody system.
It's probably
at some point you have the gnome sitting in behind the walls, following, watching, and pulling the switches. Yeah.
Rather than build the perfect system, it's cheaper to just pay some guy to sit in the control room and be like, "Oh, Bill's moving to the living room."
Right.
See,
I can't even remember where I heard this, but I did hear that Bill himself was like, frustrated, and so that made my frustration a little easier to take.
So the interesting thing for me is that like a lot of the stuff you can piece it together now, right? It's not you. So when your house was built. When they redid your house before you bought it, they probably had to buy an integrated system. But now you have things like Plex and Sonos and all these different systems. The only problem with them is that they're not particularly well integrated with each other.
Nope,
so
they are not.
So, for example, you can load up the Apple TV, go to the Plex remote, go to start Plex and get straight into that. But it doesn't know how to talk to the Sonos, so you can't use the Sonos speakers or whatever the.
I view this as like in 10 years, it will all be viewed as quaint problems of an emerging technology.
Well, I also feel like as nerds, we go to extraordinary lengths to make things just a little bit more convenient in a way that maybe we actually don't need or actually will use. Like we'll wire things up, so we can have music follow us from room to room or so.
To be honest, I've now got a projector in my living room, and the problem I end up having is depending on whether I'm watching Roku or Apple TV, I might have different problems with how to get sound out of the Sonos speakers in my ceiling.
They probably are using different inputs and stuff like that. So and the Sonos doesn't speak to the universal remote.
And nothing's telling you this. So I have to resolve to my IT manager, who is my 17-year-old son. And we pay him in this position to go and go through and basically turn shit off and turn it back on again so it resets.
Yeah.
That's often, this is the thing. We have all of this equipment, and when we want to watch a movie, we have to go into a closet and get on the ground and turn a bunch of stuff off and turn it back on again. And it's like, I want a light bulb. Click, it goes on.
Well, so this was when I set up all the smart lighting stuff in my house when we were testing it a couple years ago. I realized that the hard part isn't actually getting it all to work the way you want it to do. The hard part is figuring out what you want it to do. Right. So like my office, I have a completely different set of requirements for when the lights turn on and off than I do in my master bedroom, because I don't want the master bedroom to respond to, say, a motion sensor after 10 o'clock. But I always want the office to respond to a motion sensor because it's on the dark side of the house.
Right.
And the tools for making, like, I hit a problem where both the tools were too simple and and too complex. So I would have much rather had just a straight scripting environment where I could say, here's a big series of nested if-then statements, right?
Right.
And then a smart, really complex GUI that they designed that works on my phone. And like there's no kind of in between.
No, and this is actually also a pet peeve about the way you're communicating, the way your computer talks to you. Like when my computer says, I can't do that, error code -50, and I'm like, you're spelling stuff out. Why are you giving me a number code that I have to go look up?
But then you can go look it up because Windows does the opposite.
Windows just says an error.
Windows just says, something's wrong with your computer. And then does a big smiley face.
But
it's completely useless.
Okay, now here's something that's not an error code, but last time I tried printing something double-sided, I was confronted with your classic...
It's magic. You can't do that.
Your classic print dialogue of odds, evens, go for it, right? And it was like...
What does collate mean anyway?
It's total nightmare. So then I'm starting to think through this problem, and I realize this box is full of information. In fact, I could potentially write a script for that printer driver that says, I want to print something double-sided. And the printer would go, okay, great. Feed through the odd pages first. And go like this. So step number 1, you feed them through. Then it will tell you, pull those out of your printer, turn them upside down, turn them 180 degrees, put in, and print back to front. That's what we're about to do. And then it does it.
This is like the Glowforge. So the Glowforge, when you want to cut through a thing that's twice as thick as the laser can cut, it looks at the layout of the thing. You cut the one side, and then it says, "Okay, take it out and flip it this way, so that it knows what orientation it is on the other side."
And has a camera.
It has a camera that then looks at it, re-registers, and goes.
I mean,
so you're saying I need to use a Glowforge for printing documents?
Use a laser cutter to print. that. Yes, 1,000 times
Here's
yes.
what you're going to do. Take a sheet of paper and put it on the Glowforge bed and then sprinkle toner on it.
And let it burn in place.
Oh my God. We just invented artisanal laser printing.
Oh, handcrafted.
Right.
It's
for hipsters. This is such a bad, dumb idea. You have a laser cutter right there. Do you have a laser cutter, a laser printer we can bust open for some toner?
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
We end up being like the Etsy bio of the shop that does this. They all look like coal miners, right?
Right. It's all black
with
and like hands and
oh my God.
And they're holding a perfectly white sheet of paper with.
It turns out toner's really, really bad for you. They all get black lung and die.
Exactly.
And then we're all responsible. Don't do this at home, kids.
I think that is as good a place
We're not going to top that.
The march of technology as any.
Yeah, there we go. We will be back next week with more Still Untitled. Norm, what's going on Untested this week?
We have another one new build coming up this week. It is how should I use this? It's Lego. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, nice.
There's Lego going up on the site this week. And what we alluded to last week, if you haven't seen it yet, Adam did a wonderful collaboration with
the amazing
Simone Gertz, who's our newest tested team member. She's still in Sweden right now, but we are getting her over to the States. And you should check out her YouTube channel where
we're having her
all
kidnapped.
Her
She's going to be trundled into the back of a black Sprinter and brought here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some sort of canvas sack?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Like Brazil.
But a really wonderful project, and we'll have more stuff with her soon on Tested.
Her wake-up alarm clock robot is the funniest thing I've seen on YouTube in a long time.
It's the lipstick robot that
one's great
I love too. It's so subversive.
I like the internet arguing machine.
That one was good.
It's amazing.
Yeah. They're all good. They're all good. She's great.
There's Simone Gertz and there's more Gertz.
You know what? I think it's yachts. It's spelled one way, and she'll tell us the proper way to pronounce it.
She's just going to say, hi, I'm Simone from Tested. Then you're not going to get the answer ever. It's going to be really awkward.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for coming.